Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Aligning with Success. I'm your host, Mike DiMuccio, Royal Diamond with NECAT. First of all, I wanted to congratulate Leo for celebrating his 65th birthday yesterday. Congratulations, Leo. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
There's an idea in North America that when you get to 65, you retire. I like to say retiring is something you do from something you don't want to do. Do you expect to retire anytime soon? No, definitely not. If you love what you do, you don't retire. Well, this call is going to be really an open call for everybody. We're days into the acknowledgement of the loss of a great human being, colleague, mentor to millions, and certainly a friend to many of us on this call who've had the fortunate opportunity of maybe more than once to spend time with Bob Proctor, who passed away late evening. I guess it would have been early Friday morning. And so I thought maybe what would be kind of a neat thing to do is if we all could share maybe a moment of a memory that we have with respect to either something he shared with you, taught you, that stuck, or an encounter that you had with him, just as a small tribute to this person whose legacy continues. You know, I don't know how often I will quote him. I know I quote him pretty much all the time, and that'll continue. And you can imagine then multiply that by the millions of people who've been influenced by him and continue to be as they're watching the playbacks and the videos. How many generations, decades to come, of people who will benefit from the fact that he made his life's work for over 50 years to teach the world some of the spiritual laws, the truths that are timeless in a way that no one else delivered like Bob. And I'm so, like, though no words can possibly say how grateful I am for the opportunity to have spent the time that I have with him, but more importantly, to have been able to share that with others. And particularly now, as I see the next generation in my life being my children, beginning to emulate those thoughts, those words, those concepts, like it was known to them all their life, because it most certainly was. That's where I really feel the presence of Bob. And so I just wanted to open the floor. And for those of you, just a show of hands, how many of you actually had a chance to meet Bob Proctor in person? There's quite a few of you then. Awesome. Well, he's kind of like once encountered, never forgotten. You know, he's big name, big voice, big presence, big stature. So if you have something about Bob that you'd like to maybe share, an encounter or something that you learned, a lesson that you've put to work, or something that changed a paradigm in your mind, please take this opportunity. Go ahead and mute yourself and jump in. Don't be shy. Anybody? Oh, come. Hello.
Hello.
I will, Mike.
I can never go buy a thermostat without thinking of Bob Proctor.
Okay. Well, hang on a second. Tell us about that.
Just the whole idea of a thermostat, how you can go up and down. You're constantly trying to seek the balance point, and it comes up all the time. Just that particular point, to be able to say, okay, I am in balance with myself.
He said that the thermostat is like is a cybernetic instrument. And what it does is it's like a compass, or like a GPS more specifically. It keeps us within a certain parameters. And when we set the temperature, then if the temperature falls below a certain point, kick on the furnace, rise the temperature, and then when it hits the designated temperature setting of the thermostat, it'll turn off the furnace. And he said that we have a mind that operates like that. We have a cybernetic mind, in that we tend to not go far away from goals and expectations, because we're in the habit of meeting those goals and expectations within a certain limit. So we're defined by our paradigm. He used to use an example that I liked a lot. If you're a golfer, and I am, so I know exactly what he's talking about because I've experienced this. If you're a golfer and let's say you're just an okay golfer, and maybe you shoot maybe on average, I don't know, 90. And then one day that would be by, let's say 45 on the front, 45 on the back, thereabout. And one day you go out on the golf course, and I mean, it's just like, you can't do anything wrong. You're parring holes, you even birdie a hole or two, got close to, and then you're out there and you're shooting like a 37 or a 38 on the front nine. You're thinking, damn, if I keep this up, I might par. I might hit par. Like, that's professional golf level, right? Well, that's cybernetic control. That paradigm in your mind says, all right, that's not who you are. You're a 90. You're not a 72 golfer. You're not a scratch golfer. You're a 90. And so you go and play on the back nine, and all of a sudden you start bogeying and double bogeying and losing balls. And it's like, ah! And of course, you shoot so far off that when you average your front nine and your back nine, guess what? You're 90. And that's that cybernetic, or that paradigm within us that keeps us always within a certain limit. She's talked about it all the time, because the thing that Bob was obviously trying to bring us to the realization is, if you don't know yourself and you don't know how you're governed, then how are you going to change anything? And changing the paradigm is how we change what we experience, what the outcome is. So those of you who just joined us, we lost a hero, certainly mine, this past few days. And I just thought this would be an opportune time for those of us who knew him or met him or have studied his material, might share something you've learned from him, or just maybe a personal encounter that left an impression with you. So don't be shy. Who would like to add to this? Don't be shy. Barb Richmond, you had unmuted earlier.
Yes, I just had to turn my screen off, let the dog out. I had an opportunity to speak with Bob at our event in Toronto in 2018. And he said to me, I've seen you at some of the other Nikan events. How's it going for you? And I said, well, I've heard things repetitively, but for some reason, it just hasn't been sticking. And so he told me, went through the paradigm shift. And he said, if you really pay attention to the paradigm, you can shift that negative thinking, focus on what you really, really want, and you can't stop it from manifesting. You can't, it's impossible to stop it manifesting if you know what to focus on and keep that focus absolutely unable to be influenced by anything else. And he wished me good luck and shook my hand, and that'll always remain with me, Mike. I mean, I've met him on numerous other occasions, but that particular encounter with him in Toronto in 2018 was one of the very special ones.
It's interesting. That thought, you tend to move towards your most dominant thoughts. So that what he said was inevitable, that if you focus on what you want, and there's something I was watching today of Bob's, and I wrote it down. He said, do you know the only prerequisite for getting what you want is you got to want it.
He made that point.
Isn't that brilliant? You got to want it. And so that's the only
You've got to want
prerequisite.
it beyond anything else. It's got to be your whole focus, is what he said.
Yeah, it's interesting because the idea of wanting it is enough to attract the elements that will help you achieve it. In other words, the only prerequisite is that you want it, not that you know how to get it. And yeah, brilliant. So is there anything that you want? Because the prerequisite for having it, to getting it, is that you want it, which means you may not have the money, you may not have what you think you need at this moment in time, but that doesn't mean you can't have what you want. You just got to want it. That's the prerequisite. And then of course there are some things with respect to how you go about getting it. And as Barb just said, one of those things is you got to focus your thoughts, focus your intentions, keep your mind tuned to the frequency of the thing that you want. Become the person that is the person who has the thing that you want. Anyone else? I mean, everyone who's met Bob, come on. This is, I want to hear from you all.
He said something else to me too, Mike. He said, I've seen you at other events. Are you getting what you wanted? And I said, no, it hasn't stuck. And he said, well, then you haven't wanted it badly enough. I remember that statement.
He used to also
Haven't
say,
wanted
you
it
gotta
badly
want the
enough.
sweater. You gotta want the sweater. There's a story he used to talk about, the baseball sweater with the letter on it or whatever when he was a kid. You gotta want the sweater. I think it had to do with baseball cards or some collection. Oh gosh, that story goes back a long time, but he had to do whatever it took to get that sweater, but you gotta want the sweater or you won't do what it takes. So who else is there who would like to?
Sherry's had her hand up, Mike, and then I'll go after Sherry.
I'm sorry, who has? Sherry?
Sherry's had her hand up.
Hi,
yes.
Sherry. Let's hear it.
So I was thinking, he's somebody that I have taken voracious notes. I don't have anything. I was writing a few things when I was listening to his talk that somebody posted. It might have been you, Mike. I can't point to one thing at this very second. What I can say is that his voice is in my head. And I think it was the first voice that was in my head around this whole idea of how powerful our mind is. Because he came into my world at a very impressionable time. And so I can remember, he spoke at all the big events once he joined Ken. And then there was an event that he was hosting and being very generous about. I think it was like a 5-day workshop, 4 or 5 day workshop. It was up in New York outside of the city. And he was donating the money to Team Diamond, if I remember correctly. And so we had him up close and personal for many days. And, it's a rare experience to have a legend who, it's like, having a book that you have read over and over again, and you have the person who's written the book who's right in front of you. It was that kind of an experience for me. So I can say that he really shifted things inside of me. He is such he was and will always be, with what continues on in perpetuity, such a loud, and not invasive, not in a bad way, but his cadence was, he wanted to get in there and get your attention, and like, you can't hide from this. And for years I did. I wish I had the opportunity right now to have to speak to him, because I feel like I'm doing a lot less hiding. But he really brought me out of that hiding place because of how he made it so understandable. It wasn't a theory, it was his story. And so I have a debt of gratitude to him for that. And he will always be in my head for that, So
Thank
that's
you.
what I wanted to say.
He taught there's really only two ways to change the paradigm: shock and spaced repetition or repetition. And of course, if you were in an hour-long presentation, there wouldn't be too much repetition. But if you're in a 4-day workshop, there would be sufficient repetition. But he would always imbue it with these vocal notes in the way he spoke that were sharp and loud and just and so there was the element of shock when he would speak that would penetrate. And I think that was obviously on purpose, because it was incredibly effective. As you said, you can still hear him in your head. I can hear him in my head. I hear him in my head all the time. In fact, how I kind of grew up in that era in Nikken, as I was learning how to conduct myself in Nikken, I would always say, what would Bob say in this situation? What would Bob do in this situation? He was my reference point. And what's really interesting is Bob doesn't mince words. Like, he would just tell it like it is. He would go straight for the jugular and not apologize for it. And I thought, wow, that's kind of like, that's risky. That's like, that's Bob, but that's not me. And then I thought, I'm going to try it. And I did. I started doing what I thought Bob would do in a situation, or say what I would think Bob would say in a situation. And you know what I found? People responded to me like they would have had it was Bob, had Bob been the one who said it. So I started doing that, integrating his voice and integrating his confidence and integrating his directness into how I started to conduct myself. And I don't regret a minute of it. Boy, it saved me a lot of time. Paula, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's funny. I was introduced to Bob in 1980. I was selling Avon at the time, and I got introduced to Mary Kay, and I started learning about Bob and listening to him, and I ended up being quite successful in Mary Kay. And then I got married, pregnant, had a baby, and started a traditional business all in 1 year. So that Mary Kay ended up on the back burner, but I never forgot what Bob said. And, it got to the point where I was listening to a lot of recordings that he did, and I could only listen to him in the car because his voice was so soothing. If I listened to him at home, I'd fall asleep, and it was crazy. But I subscribed to audio, car audio online, and I listened to a lot of his stuff. And I still have some 8 tracks of his and stuff like that. I don't have an 8-track player anymore, but I can't
I don't think
bear
anyone
to
does.
I can't bear to throw them out. I think that sometimes I just have to maybe go to Walmart and get a CD player and listen to his stuff, because it's just so amazing.
Such a generous person too. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I worked with him and Linda a lot and did presentations and stuff like that. So I was sort of the analytical guru of the products and stuff like that. But he really did influence a lot of my thinking.
Thank you. Does anybody have an experience with Bob that they'd like to share, or maybe something you've learned, a lesson that you learned, something that you've applied and you've taken away from him?
What I'd like to share is this, his impact with the Nikken journey. So as we look at the my 24 years, and so he was not only an ambassador, but his wife was a Royal Diamond. So there was a little more of an intimate relationship. So those old mentoring calls that we had with him, 100,000 K club or whatever it was. But I invested in the 3% club, major investment. And after that, and doing, that was when the trajectory went up. And then the monkeys in the brain, Sherry's doing a session on the monkeys in the brain, that model, that little stick model, what goes in to the top, and then the XX and the XY, and changing the model at the bottom. You use that all the time, Mike. And so as I've looked at the parallel, and here we have Paula that even goes back to 1980, before the Nikken journey with Mary Kay. So his involvement with teaching the self-development to those of us that have been there, and that impact and those voices in there. So then with the business cycles, and some go down and some come back up again, here we are. So in that 3% club and that MSI and those 4 quadrants, who's going to do it and who isn't? And how do we as a global community help move from the one side to the other side? And who's going to do the do? We all have the want. We're here. We want to be part of this global community. And as I've been thinking myself and listening to a lot of other, doing the Eric Worre, following up with some of the other speakers there, they're saying the same thing Bob Proctor has said for how many years. And doing a lot now with the mind shift of how do we take it from that, what we really want, into achieving what it is that we want. And Mike, I see that's happened here. It's kind of interesting in my thinking. So I did some time on thinking this and pulling all
I
of
just
this
need you
out.
to narrow this
Okay,
down a
the
little bit.
narrowing it down is what's happening here tonight. We've had a shift with yesterday, Leo's birthday party and all that productivity, and your shift with the sovereign team, and the shift that's happening with the activity that's occurring now. And so I think it's the perfect time for the reminiscing, like you do when someone has died now. What are we going to do with it in honor of him? Just like the parallel a year ago when Masuda died, as Luis has taken over the helm. And so we're back to that original mission and purpose of the original founding father. And then the whole world has taken this pause. So this team and others like Paula that even go back to before the Nikken journey, it's that mindset that we're attracting and taking it to that next step, taking it from that want, supporting and helping others move from the one side to the other, so that it's not just 1% and 3% that truly go on to live that passion and are going to make the changes of everything that we've heard. I think it's those other stages of doing and practicing, walking like, talking like, acting like, practicing it, so that we can attract the results, get the results, and then that becomes the energy to change the behaviors that come out from what we want, that's in the subconscious mind before we let the other monkeys interfere. We allow them to make those changes to make the monkeys stop the monkey interfering, stop the monkey, and assume responsibility for our
Madeline,
own.
I don't know what point that you're driving, but I think I'm going to take from it a point.
Okay, please.
That it wouldn't be a bad idea if this group made it a point to plug into a personal development curriculum.
Yep.
I honestly, most of you have ever read any of my material or seen any of my work. You know that there's this thing that I call the rhythm of the business. So there's the vertical axis and there's the horizontal axis. The ranks go up here. The dates, daily, weekly, monthly, the rhythms, which is the roles and responsibilities that we play, and the competencies that we need to develop in order to maximize our growth along the curve of success in Nikken. But there was actually a third axis. I could never draw it because it would be 3-dimensional. The third axis was the personal development curriculum necessary in order to facilitate the process. And so when Bob Proctor was invited to become a part of the curriculum, the development, which we had showcased him in our Team Diamond days, our rhythm of the business of the Team Diamond era, he was the third component. He brought the element of personal development to the equation. And that's when that combination, that when the three axes were working together, we experienced hypergrowth in Nikken.
Yes.
And that those three things, take it as a macrocosm or a microcosm, those three things are necessary in every one of us as an independent business owner. We need to develop our competencies in terms of what does it take to advance and rank. That is a competence that we need to develop if we're going to teach others. In order to do that, we also have to assume roles and responsibilities. We cannot avoid that if we want to have full autonomy in our life. You know, freedom is greatest when the rules are clearly defined, but that requires a certain degree of responsibility to actually acknowledge the rules and apply them. So roles and responsibilities. But what will help you stay mentally acute, tuned to what you need to, is that third component, somebody exercising your mind. And I mean that almost literally, because you have those monkeys. Every one of us do. And I'm going to suggest that maybe you do go to Proctor Gallagher or wherever you find, just type Bob Proctor on YouTube and just start watching. Just start doing what I was doing, you know, do it in the background, whatever, because I don't know, honestly, if I could have led the organization the way I did and have and continue to. I don't know if I could have seen the kind of results that I had as one of the conductors of Team Diamond, and somebody who has played a role at Nikken head office in terms of the rapport with the company from the point of view of the field. I don't know if I could have done all of those things or maybe even any of those things had I not had that understanding. You know, I think I ended last week's call with, if I want to be free, I got to be me. But here's the full quote. Here's the full quote. If I want to be free, then I have to know me, not the me you think I should be, not the me my family wants me to be. But if I want to be free, I've got to be me. So I better know who me is.
Me is who I am.
Who I am. So that whole concept of what Bob taught, you know, that you have access to, is the key. It's the key to freedom. And Nikken is a vehicle, but like we've seen, we're all equals in Nikken. We all have the same company, the same products, the same compensation plan, but we are not equal in its expression. What's the differentiator? It's the consciousness that we're holding. And something I learned from Bob, I'm sorry if I'm jumping in again, but something I did learn from him the very first day I met him. I was invited to his home to sit at that big, beautiful dining room table that everybody knows so well who's ever been to the Proctor residence on Proctor Avenue in Toronto, Thornhill. And he was sitting to my left. He was at the head of the table. I was to his right. I think Bo Tanis was to my right. Bo had made the introductions and made this meeting happen. And it was a meeting to really kind of put some better understanding of the relevance of Nikken, because Linda had already started to dabble, but it wasn't yet, you know, hitting a home run or anything. It was just trying to figure it out. And so first question Bob asks me is, how much did you make last month? How many of you would have that kind of a question? Now you might think, who says that? Who asked that? Who is this guy who's asking me how much money I make? But the context was correct. I mean, we were there to talk about business and the potential of the business. And at that time, I think I said 67,000, which was the income of that month. And he had, And it was interesting, his reaction. It wasn't a reaction of surprise, or it was just a reaction of, And what I learned from him afterwards was he asked that question of everybody. And the reason he asked that question is because as he explained to me, he said, a person's income is a reflection of their consciousness, their relationship to money and prosperity. And so I know a lot about the person and where they're at in life based on their income. So I just asked for what their income is, and that kind of paints the picture for me of where they are in terms of consciousness, because income is a reflection of consciousness. And then as we boil that down, it's a reflection of services rendered and the impact and so forth. So he would size somebody up in terms of where they're at, not in terms of judgment, but in terms of discernment as to where they are. So he knew then maybe where the conversation would go next, or how to steer that conversation. I found that absolutely fascinating, but very telling, very telling. If you think about it. Was there another hand up? Did somebody else want to jump in and talk a little bit about your connection to Bob, or an experience that you had, or maybe a life lesson that you learned from one of his seminars? There's two people who've got their hands up. Mary, I haven't heard from you yet, so let's hear from you, Mary.
I want to say I came into NECAN with Lead the Field, and just recently was distressed because my cassette player no longer works, and it was a cassette program. Anyway, so I applied and got into the Proctor Institute and started with, doing different lessons. But the one that I stuck with all last year was, and through the pandemic, was the the phrase, the inside of the day, and then the weekend stories. And I will say that was something that no matter what it was, no matter what quote, it was something that I needed that day. And it not necessarily from Bob or his works, but just that insight that it just keeps me going, just a lift for the morning.
Fantastic. The insight of the day. Yeah. My daughters would receive that. So yeah, talk about influencing and what it takes to get what we want is, number one, we got to want it, but then we have to also harmonize our frequency to that. And so if it's about money, if you want a certain amount of money and that's not what you're currently earning, then the evidence that you're surrounded by, the bills, the bank account, every time you look online and so forth, what you're seeing constantly is a reminder of where you're at. So what is going to overcome the inertia of that? If that's what we are seeing, that's what we're acknowledging, that's what we are aware of, then that's what we're going to continue to create. So how do you go from what's physically in front of you to an imagined state, a desire, a want that is not something you're currently experiencing? How do you go there and stay there? Because that's the secret. The very movie, The Secret. That's the secret in the book, Think and Grow Rich. The very movie, the very essence, the very teachings of everything Bob has ever taught is how do you go here and stay here when you're living here? And that gap is big at times. It can be very big. Most people can only imagine making double what they're currently making because the gap is otherwise too great and they don't have the ability to keep themselves up at that frequency. It's easy, really easy to say, I'm going to make 10% more. Doesn't take a lot of effort or energy to move your consciousness, to keep your energy up, when it's so modest.
So that goes back to your point, Mike, to connect it to your point of having that caliber and that kind of a coach, employ that kind of a coach, so that you're putting that in there all the time, because it's that subconscious that keeps coming back, whether you call them monkeys or whatever you want to call them, that conditioning from our childhood or whatever that we allowed to go in there, the 5 people that you hang around, what you listen to, what you read, all of that. That's it. That's
it's like having another program running simultaneous to the one that's already lodged in you. It's having access to, it's like, back in the day, well, now we just do software updates. How many of you have done a software update on your phone, right? You do software updates on your phone, you do software updates on your laptop. Sometimes it used to be a disk back in the day. You get a software update, you stick it in the thing and it would update. So what's our software update for our mind? I mean, are you operating on the most recent update, or are you like back in the 50s or 60s or 70s, whatever? Think about it. Where's your mind in terms of the update? And that was why I turned my car into a university. I used to be a musician. The only thing I used to listen to was music. I used to write and listen to my own music and so forth. That was my library. My car was my, my center for that. But when I got into this business and I decided that I wanted to succeed at this business, I needed to understand it. I needed to know how to talk about it, how to internalize it and so forth. So my car did not play music very much, except when I was literally turned off a business. I would be listening to everything that fed my mind, that new update. So how important is that third axis? That third axis, which keeps our mind updating, keeps it current, keeps it staying on the frequency, on the channel of the possibility. If you don't have something like that in your life running every day, especially when there's so much running in your life every day to the contrary, keeping you down in the dumps, the state of depression in the world today, thanks to our beautiful, I don't even know why they call it mainstream media, because it's actually the lamestream media. All they're doing is bombarding you with the worst possible thing you could be subjecting your consciousness to 24/7, and people gobble it up like it's pablum. Well, you know where those minds are, in the gutter, and they're not coming out till they turn that crap off. And so, but what are you doing to turn something on? It's easy to say, oh, I don't listen to that. So what do you listen to? I don't read that. Well, what do you read? So if you don't have a mentor in your life, and a mentor could be, pick up a book, and study it. Don't just read it like it's a novel and you're killing time. Really, like, internalize it, try and understand it. Every time you read a book, you're stepping into somebody's mind for that time. It's not your mind, it's their mind. So choose your books wisely. Choose your mentoring wisely. Choose your video content wisely, but do it conscientiously. John Maxwell, there's so many beautiful people who've committed their lives to this work. But anyway, I digress. Today we're talking about Bob. Paula, you got your hand up. Madeline, you still have your hand up, so I'm not sure if you're... Paula, go ahead.
I still subscribe to Automobile U. I have a DVD player and I still stick stuff in there. I also have a connection to a USB port. I listen to motivational stuff all the time because regular radio is crap, and it spews negative stuff, and you need to focus on personal development. And I think that is very, very important. I learned that in 1980, and I still subscribe to that today.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if Bob had, if he narrowed down how to size somebody up by asking them how much they earn, I'd say that's probably because he's had a lot of experience with people and he understands the correlation. So think about it. If you're not earning what you want, it's a reflection of where your consciousness is at, and therefore where must the work happen? Happens in the mind before it happens in the physicality. We're just going to continue to repeat our past until we acknowledge that and do something to move that forward.
The one thing that I did learn is the beauty of network marketing is everybody gets life that gets in the way. And the thing is, with network marketing, you can put it on the back burner for a while and then you can pick it up later.
Most certainly. Most certainly. by the way, speaking of network marketing, so I was in a conversation yesterday with Richard Brook, kind of giving him the situation, the information that I had learned since Monday of last week. Anyway, he, if you recall, did an interview of Bob Proctor in 2018. So he also, I believe I published it, or somebody published it just on the chat the other day. Did someone, well, anyway, if you look on the core consultant chat, I believe somebody had published it. Could have been Geeta. I'm not sure who it was that did it, but I saw it there. Have a watch. Talk about a really great interview. Two guys who both in their own right have accomplished great things, and it's funny because it was a highlight of Richard's life to spend that time with Bob Proctor. He's so grateful for that. There was also a link posted more recently, I think, on the chat of Bob's presentation. It's about an hour and almost 2 hours long. Bob's presentation at GoPro. If you haven't seen that, my girls just, I saw the chat, they have decided they're going to do a watch party of that presentation. Great idea. So if you got a team, then they're local and you can make that happen, do a watch party where you can pause, discuss, carry on, have some food, interact. That's a really powerful way to spend the time. And of course, you're going to get all the information that Bob teaches in that hour and a half or 2 hours. So yeah, I just want to, before we go back to everybody who's already spoken, is there somebody who hasn't spoken that would like to step up and just tell us a little bit about your experience with Bob? I'll come back to you, Barb. Anyone who's, Maggie, go ahead, Maggie, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to so many Bob Proctor events, and Michael, you've been instrumental in keeping him front and center with Nikan, and I really love the fact that your girls have learned so much from him. One of the stories that I remember so well, and I think it's part of your Going Royal story, is the 333 and keeping everything on the right side of the page. And we use that in our mentoring still. You know, which side of the page are you on? You need to get over to the right side of the page, which are the possibilities and the things that you can change. So that's one of the most profound lessons I've learned from Bob.
Let me just touch on that for a second. That was 3 million in 3 days time in a matter of 3 hours. So they were going to do something for a period of 3 hours in 3 days time to generate $3 million. So they just started with the idea, 333. Now think about it, guys. If I said to you right now, we're going to generate $3 million in 3 days from now with a 3-hour event. Let's brainstorm. That's what they did. Anyway, of course, if I said that to you, what's the first thing you think about? What's the first thought you have?
3 million in 3 days. That's a lot of money. That's what
Okay,
many people,
so-
yeah, that's one reaction.
So we're all going to have a reaction to that. If I was real serious about it and I really implored you to do this, participate in this, then some of you are going to start checking your schedule saying, well, I don't know, I don't think I have that day available. What's the first tendency for us? Because we're programmed that way. The first tendency is to find fault or to create some kind of a negative that is not going to contribute to the solution, right? That's human nature. So I could have said, we're going to get into this business called network marketing with this company called Nikan that's been around for 46 years, and we're going to make a fortune in the next 3 to 5 years. Boom, what happens? Everybody goes over there first. So is it a surprise that you encounter that when you talk to people? Shouldn't be. It's programmed. So what Bob would say is, so he used this example. If a person said, you know, when we talk about the investment to get started, you got to get a pack 2, 3. And so a person says, well, don't have the money. Oh, okay. Well, let's work on that for a second. And he would draw a line down the center of the page and then a title line across the top. On the left side, he would write, why I can't. And then on the right side, he would write as the title, how I will. Okay. So then he would say, All right, so on the left-hand side, by the way, I've done this a lot of times. Okay, even my girls know this one. So I write on the left-hand side, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover all the reasons why you can't get your products, why you can't get your Nikken business started with these products, with these packs. Okay, got it? On the left-hand side, all the reasons why. Got it? You're thinking about them? Okay, and on the right-hand side, we're gonna write down how you will, okay? All the ways that you can and you will. Okay, got that? Okay, so let's start on the left-hand side. Wait, would you agree that no matter what we write on the left-hand side, no matter what it is, it's not going to help us come up with the money to get the products? Would you agree with that? They say, yeah, I guess so. So he then just puts a big X right through the left-hand side. Says we're not going to waste any time with that then. And let's now start talking about how you will. And so, and then he might throw something out like credit card. Oh, I can't, what, that's a can't. So credit card, we'll put credit card on the right. Your parents, oh, I couldn't go your parents, that's, he would put it on the right. So what he would do is he would shift your thoughts, your consciousness away from the negative, trying to solve for the negative, to solving for the positive. And at the end of the day, you'd come up with a number of things that were the answer, the solution, at least a way. So that was another technique that I got from Bob, which was very, very useful and has been very useful in my business. Anybody else?
That was a very helpful example from Maggie's comment. So that's aligned with success. That's the helpful tip. Yes.
Aligning with success. Yeah. And by the way, this is a norm for people, right? You got to remember that we're dealing with, and by the way, if you're not trained or if you're not plugged in to this stream of consciousness, because it's been a while, you've gone back into the groove, you know, the 40 or 50 years you were programmed the way you were programmed prior, then you're not going to hear it when somebody says it. You're not going to pick up on what you need to do next in order to help that person. So it's a Ben Franklin close, very similar. So the idea here is, if you are plugged into a stream of consciousness that keeps your mind sharp, focused on the prize, thinking correctly, processing correctly because you got the latest update, then when you hear a prospect or a member of your team say something that is not in alignment with that is not in alignment with success, then you will also be able to respond to it and help them get onto the right side of that page instead of the left side of the page. It makes you a better sponsor. So again, if you're not plugged into a stream of consciousness that is operating at a level higher than the one you're operating at right now, then how are you expecting to grow? How are you going to get further ahead? If this is where you're at and this is what you're thinking, how are you going to set goals that are up here? Nikken puts on the table a lot of great prizes. Team Kaizen, Team Taishi, Club Ki, all of those things, Club Ki Pro. Those are things they're willing to give away. They're going to give them to whoever earns them. But how many of you have actually made a decision to earn them? You've heard about a month and a half now of instruction, about focus, about intention, about decision, about the importance of those things. How many of you have actually done something to do that, to achieve that? So then the question I would ask, if you haven't, why haven't you? Maybe you just don't want it enough. If it's not something you want, why not? Because you're comfortable? Are you done? Are you done now? Are you ready? Is this the last chapter? Or are you ready to write a new page? Like, think about it. I want to be serious with you. Where are you at in your life? Retired? Is Nikken a reflection of you in retirement mode? Or is Nikken a reflection of you as somebody who's contributing to building a community that's thriving, that's alive, that's happening? I mean, think about it. How do you identify with this? Is it hard to hear or is it exciting? You got to decide. You know, can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I'm going to be the guy who salts the oats. Every now and then I'll sprinkle a little bit of salt and say, hey, is that it? You done? I've had these conversations with multimillionaires. I've actually said that. So you done? You're at the top of the pyramid. You done? Or is there still something more? Still something left in you? Some song unsung? Trust me, when you ask that question of somebody, you'll have a very interesting conversation right after. Because nobody wants to see themselves as done, but they live as though they're done. So sometimes it takes a little bit of person or somebody to come along and sprinkle a little bit of salt in their day to say, is that it? You done? Got the best of you? You're living in the past? No future? You know, the past is you, the best of you is behind you. Is that really it? You think God made you that way? So sometimes it takes a Bob Proctor to come into our lives and challenge us with what we believe or how we're operating to knock us back into our senses. Sherry, you had your hand up.
One thing, well, there's one thing that was been rolling around in my mind, this image, and you said something that prompted me. So I shared this on the birthday celebration with Leo yesterday, that a friend sent this to me, that according to the New England Journal of Medicine, our most productive decade. Now, see, if I hadn't read this, I would have said 40 to 50 or 30 to 40. It's 60 to 70. And the second most productive decade is 70 to 80. And this is like science saying this, right? So that blew my mind. I mean, I've been saying that. I've been saying that the next 30 years are going to be my most prosperous. I had this image. I don't know if this is going to make sense or not. And I had this image because I know I've set goals and I've reached goals, and then I get comfortable again, you know, and I think that's human nature. We do that. And so I had this image of, like, you have this silhouette of yourself. And so if you fit, it's like a puzzle piece. If you don't change it, then you go out here and you reach for something, but that piece, you go back into it and you just fit right back into that spot. So the thing that we have to do is we have to, like, rearrange, in essence, our body, our shape, so that it's sticking out in ways that it didn't stick out before. So that when you kind of slide back down, you go, oh, I don't fit there anymore. That doesn't fit anymore. The one thing that I will say that I've done that, and then I got complacent again. It's very easy to do. When it was a life cycle plan a couple of years ago, several years ago, I used to be so scared to speak. If I was speaking like this, I don't know, 10 years ago, 5 years, 6 years ago, I'd have been knee knocking. I'd been practicing in my head. I don't know if I can say it. I mean, I was really, really scared, and many people are, right? And so one of the things I did that really has helped me is I found pictures. I started, instead of doing so much with magazines for life cycle plans, is to go on the internet, because you can be much more specific. And I found it was women speaking, and I probably had something like powerful speaking. And I could grab it for you, but I have like probably 10 images of women who are speaking, they're commanding. And I literally, before I speak, I go stand in front of that thing and I put my body in that gyration of whatever they're doing, because I want to take that in. And I think that's some of the stuff he's talking about, is that you've got to see that image, not the old image. And those are the steps towards stepping into that new thing, because, you know.
Fantastic. Wow. So I got more to look forward to, guys. How about you? Yeah, that's amazing.
Right?
Totally. I can see why that is. You know, I think what happens is we go from bravado, you know, casting out there an image of who we are that's not authentic, to one that tells people to go sit on, you know, go fly a kite. you go from the person who's trying to make everybody like you to the person who doesn't give a rat's, you know what, and just says it like it is, which increases your productivity because you're not mincing words, which brings me back to what Bob used to do at the very beginning, was he would just be really direct. Mike, I got to tell you a story. Did I tell you a story when I bought my house? Did you ever hear that story? When I bought my house? Some of you haven't. So the house that I'm in, this was a huge purchase. This was my first home. It was massive. And it wasn't a small purchase. It was a showpiece home. So I'm in Indianapolis with Bob Proctor, and we're doing the thing. He does this thing. I do my thing. It's a Niken, event and a Proctor event. And anyway, so he's setting up in the theater, and I got the sign back I have to sign for the sign back offer of the house. So I made the offer, they accepted. Now I have to sign off. So talk about nervous, right? So Bob, I needed a signature. I needed somebody to actually witness my signature. So I went into the theater with the paperwork that just come off the fax machine. And I go up to Bob, and he can see, he's seeing the nervousness in me. And I'm not saying anything but he's seeing it. And I need him to sign this thing. And he looks at me and he goes, Mike, you teach this stuff. Quite frankly, I'm surprised you didn't buy a bigger house. That's exactly what he says to me. Anyway, so he signs the paperwork, I sign it. And as I'm walking out of the theater, loud over the microphone, hey, Mike. And I turn around, and up on the screen, just do it. That's Bob Proctor. That was a moment in my life. This house, he witnessed the signature of the purchase on this house. So, but yeah, it takes sometimes somebody that can be that in your face direct, just point blank, tell it like it is. So if that's wisdom, that people, come clean, shed all of that, trying to impress the Joneses thing, and start getting more honest with themselves and therefore honest with others, I can see why your productivity would go up for sure. You would start choosing things that were more in alignment with what you really value.
So if you're doing and working towards the goal, you don't have time to think about the monkeys that are screwing up the thinking or holding you back. So that's the do part. The do and the practice the skills. We become more proficient at doing it. Speaking.
Yeah, you've fallen enough times, you've scratched your knees enough time, you bleed, you scab, and you go on. It's like, I think that's just what comes with wisdom, is it's like nothing's going to rattle me. It'd take a lot to rattle me. So guys, that means for most of you on this call, not all of you, but for most of you on this call, you're coming into your most productive years in this business. Question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with it? Are you done? Or are you going to do something about it? Bob Proctor was doing seminars right up to the end. He was doing his online stuff right up to the end. I'm watching some of the videos. I know exactly when he did it. And by the way, one of the things I'm so proud is his whole latest videos of the last couple of years. On the desk to his right behind him, is that beautiful Humans Being More statue. It's right up front. And so I'm really proud that he saw that as something significant enough that he would have it in display like that on his in his backdrop. Anyways, we're out of time, and I just want to say, thanks for
Mike?
sharing. Yes.
May we ask how Linda is?
Well, obviously it's a difficult time for the whole
Yes.
family. It's a big family, and yeah, she's having a hard time with it. They're still in the planning stages of what they're going to be doing, which we will hear shortly. I'm pretty sure there will be a memorial service that we'll be able to participate in online. In any event, Bob, thank you for your contribution to our lives and the lives of so many countless people out there. We'll never know the degree to which his life has had impact, that ripple effect will go on for generations to come. And we're so grateful that, you know, he came and did his work and did it right to the end. So guys, let's do our work. Let's do it like we mean it, right to the end. Who's with me?
Thank you very much.
Yoo-hoo.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thanks.
evening.
Thanks, Mike.
Lovely tribute, Mike.
Thank you.